So I started, just like anyone else would, on Google with how to start a podcast. Hey guys, this is Just Dowd, and I would like to welcome you to the Girl Do It Yourself podcast. I'm passionate about all things creative, from DIY and home design to motherhood and self-love. I'm a mom of 3 boys, a small business owner, and a creative. And after overcoming some struggles, I ventured into DIY, power tools, and design projects in the place of therapy, basically. And I'm here to encourage and inspire other women to pick up the tools, do the hard things, and figure this crazy life out as best we can along the way. So join me for relatable stories, inspiration, and a dash of humor on design, DIY, motherhood, growth, mindset, and more. Buckle up, because my ADHD is about to take us on a wild ride. Hey guys, you're listening to the Girl Do It Yourself podcast, episode 3. In this episode, I am going to break down some of the main reasons I decided to start this podcast. I have been asked this by some of my followers, and I've also asked myself this same question. And I feel like this is my way of being open and transparent with you right from the get go, while also sort of processing this for myself as well. So I'm going to talk about why I decided to start the podcast, what events have kind of brought me to this moment, and then where I hope it will take me in the future. So there are a few main reasons why I started this podcast, Girl, Do It Yourself. First and foremost, I do hope to turn it into a form of income in the long run, while still providing free, quality content to you, the listener. But for the time being, I am relying on it to help me process personal things, work through this pivot and adjustment in my business, and hugely to be a source of inspiration and education for other women who want to find their inner courage or start DIY projects and cheer others on, while I also work through some of the same issues and ideas. Quality content that I am passionate about that can hopefully help others while also helping me and allowing myself to be more authentic in this space where there is no immediate comparison or visible metrics. On social media, I have always felt a little uncomfortable, and I think in some ways that shows in some of my content, which is what has limited me on those platforms. But without a visual, I feel a little bit more comfortable opening up, being more myself, sharing more of what I want to share rather than what I feel like I'm supposed to share, if that makes sense. So I think the first thing to consider is that it's no secret that most people, when they start out creating content and building audiences online, that they hope to turn it into a way to make money. And I would not consider myself an exception to this assumption. I do continue to strive and push to find my place as an entrepreneur, because my goal and my dream is to be able to make enough money to supplement my husband's income in a way that can take off some of that pressure and stress he feels as the primary income generator, and know that if something comes up with our boys or us, that we can cover down on the cost without taking away from other aspects of our life. Not to mention how absolutely crazy inflation has been as of late, and how that affects every part of our lives financially. It would also be amazing to bring in enough money to take my family or just my husband on a much needed vacation. And I dream of being able to have the financial flexibility to be able to around and support other small businesses and entrepreneurs on a daily basis. Aside from the money part of my business, I dream of creating a community where women can come to find support and inspiration in many aspects of their life from me, as well as the greater community, and also through quality guests that I bring on the podcast. I mentioned this in my first episode, but I'm going to repeat it because This is something that I have heard more times than I can even count. And that is women saying to me after seeing some content I shared about mostly DIY projects, but also some of my exercise accomplishments. They say to me, I wish I could do that too. And I find this so frustrating because I really want to know where along the way we were taught that we can't. And I say we because I have fallen into that type of thinking as well, and I still do sometimes. But if there is something you want to do, then there really is nothing stopping you other than yourself, no matter what that is. And I realize that is really broad and overgeneralized, but I truly believe that if you want something bad enough, you will find the time or the energy or the money or whatever else you might need to make it a reality. This podcast, for example, it's 10 p.m. I put my kids to bed. I cleaned up the kitchen. And then I sat down and started writing my script for the episode. And now I am recording it at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. There are plenty of other things that I could think of that seem like they might be a little bit more fun. Um, but this is something that I truly care about. This is something that is really on my heart, and I have it set in my mind that this is the path that I'm going to start down. So I am making the time. I have a cool, nifty new microphone that I was gifted for my birthday from my sister in law. And I am working on new content as much as possible. And I will be bringing as much as I can to you whenever I can. Okay, so back to why I started this podcast. So, since starting out in content creation back in 2018, I have always felt like I was forcing things and nothing really felt super aligned. My product based business, Modern Lifestyle Gifts, that I owned and operated over the last 2 years, got really close, but still never quite felt right. And for me, it has never just been about making money, but also about finding my purpose and path outside of motherhood. Now, don't get me wrong, being a mom is my number one priority and always will be. But I am the type of person that needs to find fulfillment outside of motherhood in order to be the best version of mom that I can be. I have always been an overachiever as long as I can remember. I was the youngest member of my competitive gymnastics team, fastest on any other sports teams I played on. I started college classes my senior year of high school and finished my undergrad and graduate degrees in 5 years combined. Also, marathon and half marathon runner. You get the point. But honestly, out of all of that, maybe minus my master's program, motherhood has been the hardest for me. And I think it's because in many ways it's forced me to slow down, which is something I am not very good at, and also required me to look inward and address things I had always been moving too quickly to reflect on. But I'm learning now that there needs to be a balance between large goals and high achievement with slowness and silence. And I think this podcast is going to help me get closer to finding that balance and being able to teach and inspire other women to find that balance as I sort of get there myself. So we can learn how to do this together. So when I decided I was going to start this podcast, it was largely on a whim, and the first thing I did was announce it to the world through my Instagram. Naturally, I did this before I had any clue how to even get started, but I knew I could figure it out, and those types of challenges are what I live for, honestly. So I started just like anyone else would on Google with how to start a podcast and a quick rundown of what I did next without going into the weeds is I chose a hosting site. I chose Spotify for podcasters. Then to record, I tried a few different options, but what I am currently working with is Adobe Podcast, which is free for me because I already have an Adobe Suite account for my photo editing, but I don't think it's either very expensive or potentially still free for non-membership holders. So then I used GarageBand, which is also free on my Mac, and I use this to blend together the music and the audio that I export out of Adobe. The music I use is royalty free and also free from YouTube. My sister in law actually helped me find them. And a lot of it is not perfect. I will probably end up changing some, if not all of the branding aspects along the way, but that's okay since it makes sense to change that type of stuff as things evolve and change anyway. I'll probably also change the software programs I use and maybe the hosting. I don't know. I guess we'll kind of see. But my point is, I just got started and I just sort of started figuring it out. What I really like about Adobe Podcast is it transcribes my verbal words into a transcript that I can then edit as if it's like a blog post almost. I can also export it in a written format already, so you can read it if you want instead. Have you been looking for a new solution to help you meet your nutritional goals? Well, AG1 is a comprehensive nutrition and gut health in one simple scoop. So I started using AG1 about 3 months ago because my physical health is something I have been wanting to get back under control since having kids. I could feel how drained I was, and knowing with 1 scoop of powder in 8 ounces of water every morning, I'd be able to fill most of the nutritional gaps I was missing, I was sold. So a couple of other things AG1 can help is promoting gut health with pre and probiotics, supporting immune health with vitamin C, zinc, and functional mushrooms, boost energy, which I have seen because I haven't needed an afternoon pick-me-up as often, and when the original reason it was created, which was to help with post-workout recovery. Now I will say it definitely does not taste like a cool glass of sweet tea because it is still a green drink. However, it is truly not bad, and the results and the benefits are just so worth it. So with the link in my show notes, you can check out their website, and if you order a monthly subscription, which comes with 30 servings in a single pouch and a free starter kit, which is a premium jar and a shaker bottle, you can also get a free vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 travel packs. And for my scripts, I type out most of what I want to say and actually read it almost verbatim out loud from my screen. You'll notice when I start saying or taking longer pauses is when I decided last second to add something off the cuff because I don't do improv very well, which I blame on the ADHD. So one day I hope to be able to get more comfortable with what I want to talk about and how I feel behind the mic and just be able to lay out some bullet points to speak from. But for now, I work off a script, which is what works best for me. And I like to think I still apply good inflection in my voice, so not to make it sound like I'm reading from a script. I think because I am writing it in a way that is very conversational and natural for me, and I use language that I would say in a normal conversation with someone, that is why it comes off sounding pretty natural and not robotic. And while one day I do hope to be able to hire out some of the aspects of my podcast, like editing and maybe management, right now I am starting this and operating this on less than a shoestring budget. Plus, I feel like since the title of the podcast is called Girl Do It Yourself, it is more than fitting, if not almost required for me, to start this and figure it out on my own. Practice what you preach, right? But I also like to feel like I have a handle on all aspects of my business, and it so that way if something were to happen, I would be able to step in. So learning how to record and edit and brand and upload and sync and all those things just makes me feel like more confident and comfortable as well as true to myself and my audience. So, moving forward into the new year, I plan to be getting content out more regularly and more consistently as I continue to develop my online courses and navigate the interior design space both locally as well as virtually. I plan to discuss these things while sharing tips and tricks on all my favorite topics. I don't really love listening to podcasts that are specific to a time of year because if you catch them at a completely different time, I find it a little frustrating. But while I do have plans and ideas coming into 2024, and I do plan on doing one podcast about those, I also don't believe that you have to start a new goal or resolution only at the beginning of a year. I think this is something you can do at any point in time that makes the most sense to you and what you are going through. So, my takeaway today is about goals and resolutions. Whether you're listening to this podcast at the beginning of 2024 or at any other point in time, you can also start to plan and work towards a new goal or resolution. Now, you may have heard people talk about creating a word for the year, but for me, that has never worked because just one word is not enough to encompass my goals and desires, and it feels too rigid and confining to me. So instead, I'm going to create a phrase focused around each aspect of my life and each of my goals. And this is something you can do at any point in time. And it's also something that can change for you throughout the year. So, for example, for motherhood, my phrase is going to be present and know you are their home. To remind myself, I only get one chance at their childhood. For my business, my phrase is keep building and the right time will come. And this is to remind myself that even though it feels like I have been running in circles and banging my head against the wall, it is all for something and it has all helped me build the foundation for what is to come. And this will most likely change over the course of the year as things change for me and my business and my family. And that's totally fine. And now it's time for the She Savvy takeaway. So sit down, make a list of some of the goals or aspects of your life that feel like the highest priority to you, and create a phrase that resonates with you and helps you plan ahead for the future, whatever that might look like. So to close out this episode, I hope hearing my story and understanding my why behind this crazy pet project will give you some inspiration as well as a desire to come back here for my future episodes. And yes, that is a shameless plug. But seriously, let's build and grow our dreams together, no matter what they may be. So go start the blog or the project, or even your very own podcast, if that tickles your fancy. And let's work through all the difficulties and struggles together while also celebrating the wins and success. I hope you were inspired or learned a little something about home design and DIY. I'm also putting together an online course right now as we speak called the DIY Home Design Lab, which is going to be a roadmap to walk you through making some of the core decisions of design, getting started in DIY, mindset, color theory, budget and planning, project inspiration, and so much more. So keep an eye out for that, and I'll be updating the release date on all of my platforms. Thank you so much for tuning into the Girl Do It Yourself podcast. Until next time, stay creative, girl, and remember, you can do it yourself.